When we're young, we have an amazing, positive outlook about how great life is going to be, but somewhere along the line, we forget to dream and end up settling. Join Up Dots features amazing people who refuse to give up and chose to go after their dreams. This is your blueprint for greatness. So here's your host, live from the back of his garden in the UK, David Ralph.
Yes, hello there. It is David Ralph. Would you expect anything less? Of course you wouldn't. It's got to be me or there ain't going to be a show. We have got a guest on today he's a master. He is a master of an instrument, but until recently I'd never heard of. But upon stumbling upon him on the web, I knew that I wanted to have him on my show because I want to get different characters. I want different personalities. I want different stories to make this show really a mix where you just don't know what you're going to get each day. And this guy is going to tell you a story that if you're like me, you won't have heard it before. He got to the top of the Hammered Dulcimer pile when back in 2010 he won the national championship, even though this was not an instrument that was on his radar even a few years previously. As he says, for years I was a musician who played a lot of different instruments, jack of all, master of none, and the Hammered Dulcimer was just another instrument I could play a little on, but not really kill it. But with a bit of practice, he's not only killing it, but actually smashing it to pieces too, and that makes sense if you listen to the show. So what was it about this instrument that really spoke to him and allowed him to become a musician full-time, travelling the country, performing well-known classics with a unique twist? Well, let's find out as we bring onto the show to start joining up dots, the one and only Ted Yoder. How are you, Ted?
I'm doing great, David. Thank you.
That was a big build-up, wasn't it? I was giving it everything I could there, Ted.
That was. There should have been fireworks. I somehow felt like I fell short with just saying, "Hey, how are you?"
No, it's good. It's the low-key approach that you... It's funny, actually, because Americans aren't actually very low-key. I've had this conversation quite a few times, but over here in the United Kingdom, we're very low-key. We don't really show our emotions at all. But Americans are very woo-hoo and high fives, and even when you go into a shop... It's like, it's like Jesus has come back or something. They're really enthusiastic and positive. So it's nice to see a little bit of a low-keyness about you.
All right. I'll try not to disappoint.
No, don't disappoint. So whereabouts is life for you, Ted? You are in Indiana in the United States.
Yes, pretty much smack dab in the middle of the States. They call it the Midwest, in the middle of farm country, really. So I'm surrounded by a kind of a sect of people, if you will, called the Amish.
Oh, so you're out building sheds every day?
Well, not me, but other people.
That's my only Amish reference. Do you see that happening?
I know a few favors. Oh yes. Oh yeah. There's constant construction. It's not quite as old school as what you see on movies like The Witness. Back in the 80s. They still drive around horse and buggies, but it's not. They don't necessarily do barn raising like they used to.
There was a program over in the United Kingdom maybe 2 or 3 years ago when they took teenagers from England who had grown up in London and Birmingham and some of the cities and made them live with the Amish community for a while. Uh-huh. And you would have thought that the English people would have rebelled against it, not having sort of the kind of the things that they normally have on tap. But actually, after about 3 or 4 weeks, they eased into it, and there was a pleasantness to the life that they actually were going to miss when they came back to the hustle and bustle of what we see in the United Kingdom.
Oh yeah. Well, it's always good to unplug, if you will. With our smartphones and everything, we're so connected, and I've had to do that a lot. Just kind of bringing in practices because I have a family. I have young kids, and it's just not right bringing my cell phone to the supper table. To where I can always have access to email and that type of thing. Because if that's the case, everything is urgent. People can wait a day or two to hear back from you. They're not going to die.
They're not Barack Obama. That's what I always say to people, because I don't. I say this a lot, but I don't have a mobile phone, and I'm absolutely adamant I'm not going to have one. And so when I leave my computer, no one can get hold of me, and it winds people up big time. Not because they can't get hold of me, it's because when they want to get hold of me, they can't do it. It's almost like when the thought comes into their head, I want to speak to David, I should be at the other end waiting for that call. And of course they can't. Yeah. So, it drives them mental, and I quite enjoy it, Ted.
Absolutely.
So Indiana, I actually spent a few days in Indiana. I got snowed in. I was on a road trip. And we ended up in Louisville at the Ali Museum, which was very great. And then the heavens opened. I don't know if you remember this. It was back in February 2010. And there was so much snow on the eastern seaboard. And we made a stupid mistake of flying in on the 5th of February to do this road trip. And it was just horrendous, day in, day out. It was just freezing cold. And we ended up in a place called Madison in Indiana, which was really picturesque. Which I don't think is a million miles away from you, up near a river somewhere in Indiana, and it was very pleasant place to be.
Oh, it's beautiful when it snows. We had a really hard winter this last winter, but it's fun when it shuts things down, because then it really just helps you just stop, Yeah, so it's good to get snowed in.
Absolutely. So let's get onto the actual show, because I'm sure our guests aren't here just to talk about where they live. So the thing about Join Up Dots, it really is looking at your path and looking at the stumbles and the falls and the successes that have actually brought you to the show today. And it seems like a very short path. 2010, you won the Hammered Dulcimer. But can you remember the very first time you saw this instrument? Was it something that was always around, or was it you stumbled across it one day in its uniqueness? Because if nobody knows what this is, and I didn't, it basically looks like a table with a load of strings on it, and you kind of bang it like a sort of it's almost like a sort of upside down harpsichord with hammers, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. It's actually a grandparent to the piano and the harpsichord. Many cultures, and I'll probably butcher some of the names, but since you have a worldwide audience, I'll try and bring in. There's a cymbalum, there's a hockbrett, a yanchin. So there's all different cultures have a version of the hammered dulcimer. The hammered dulcimer is actually just the American name, it's a predecessor to the piano. And if you open up a piano, you strike a key and a hammer hits it, you just take away the key and you're actually holding just one hammer in each hand and striking the strings just like that.
It's as simple as that, but you've got to be a master to play it. So do you remember when you first found this thing? Was it always in your life, or was it a freak that it came into your life?
Yeah, it wasn't always in my life. I was probably about 18 when I first saw one, and I played piano and keyboard because I wanted to be a rock star. I wanted to be Billy Joel or Elton John, on the keyboards. And then I heard this one artist named Rich Mullins who had it on one of his albums, and I saw him play it in concert, and it was totally captivating. And I couldn't get it out of my head. It took me about 10 years to find one, just because the builders, actually the people that still build them are people just kind of in their backyard. They have a shed or workshop, and they build one at a time. And so those people weren't on the internet, and so you had to kind of know somebody who knew somebody in order to find one.
Could you build one yourself now?
Oh, I probably could, but it would take me so long. I wouldn't have any time to play.
But you could build like a mini one, could you? Do they have to be that size? Because it is not the easiest thing to carry around, I imagine. It does look like a table. You're not going to be playing air dulcimer, are you? Sliding on your knees. You're pretty much rooted to the spot, I imagine. Yeah,
I stand up and play. So because I'm kind of a mover when I perform and stuff. So I like the freedom of not being rooted to a chair. So a lot of people play it sitting down. I like to stand up, but yeah, my particular instrument is only about 12, 13 pounds, so it's not terrible heavy. Um, but yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I could build one, but I'd rather leave that to the experts that build them, and I'll just worry about mastering my playing.
So how many people are out there? Because I think one of the things that struck me was you won a national championship. And, I'm not knowledgeable on every single subject, but I'd never, ever heard of this instrument. And I thought, blimey, there's a national championship. And is there a world championship? Can you go on to sort of global Hammered Dulcimer?
I think there's not a global Hammered Dulcimer. There's some big festivals, I think, over in China. But there again, I don't know if it, with the different cultures, instruments, they're laid out differently. So like I couldn't go over to Germany and play a Hochbrett necessarily. I could have some techniques that would transfer, but as far as note wise, it's totally laid out different. So it would be tough to do that. So when they say national, yeah, it's just America because it's an American instrument. Nothing world that I know of yet.
You could create it, Ted. I'm building a market for you.
Where would I host it? Here in the States?
No, everything's always in the States. It winds me up, to be honest. And I'll be honest with you, it always winds me up when you have like your World Series and stuff, and there's no one else invited. It's only Americans.
Exactly.
What is all that about?
I know. We're rather hubris. I know that.
Run free and just land in a different country, and you could create a new world of Hammered Dulcimer followers, and you could have 9 wives, all Dulcimer bangers as well.
That's a very touchy subject.
Yes, I can imagine. We, especially at 8:30 in the morning. Over breakfast, yes. You don't want to do that. So, what was your aims? You say you wanted to be Billy Joel and Elton John when you was a young man, but obviously those kind of guys come few and far between. So, where was the sort of, I don't want to say realistic aim for you, but was it just to be a travelling musician? Was it to be a teacher? Where was your aim in the early stages?
I think I was always a lover of performing. I tried to do the realistic thing, because I had people in my life that would say, well, when are you going to get a real job? Being a musician doesn't pay. And of course, it's a bit different now than it was back in the day, when you had to have a recording contract to make a living, or that's just the way things were done, I guess. Maybe not to make a living. But anyway, I tried to go to school and become a music teacher and everything. And I actually had a professor, my music professor, pull me in one time, and she was just chatting with me, and I told her about this opportunity I had to go down to Texas and tour with some musicians down there, and she said, Ted, your face just totally lit up when you were talking about that. And she actually told me to quit school and go be a musician.
That's quite amazing, isn't it? You would have thought she would say, stick with your studies. The studies are important, right, and then you can go and be a musician.
Right. Yeah. I was totally shocked, and so she keeps in touch with me still today, and we I play every now and then for some of her choir concerts and stuff like that. So it's really quite an interesting relationship.
And that is the kind of teacher that you want. Because I've got a lady who I'm interviewing tonight who actually believes that the education system is flawed and we should be focusing more on life skills more than what the Romans did. And I'm going to be discussing that fact. But so many people in the shows have been saying almost the same thing, that, you know, you have to encourage the enthusiasm more than the education. Do you feel that?
Yes. It's like with my kids, we actually homeschool, and I know it's kind of a buzzword right now, but for us, my idea is that character is something that can't be taught in an institution, and I've run into more people who are bosses, and even people that are independent, entrepreneurs and stuff, and they hire out people. Mostly what they do is they look for people with character that are just going to be people of their word. They're going to do what they say. They're going to go above and beyond the call of duty. And hey, I'm not bashing public education. That's not my goal here. But it's just I want to teach my kids character. And if you teach them character, you can teach them how to, or they can learn anything they want, anything they put their mind to. And if they don't know a particular skill, they should know how to find it, and acquire it. So I think that's a missing key in a lot of education right now.
Because we don't do homeschooling. If we do homeschooling in the United Kingdom, it's because our kids have been expelled. They basically have to go to school every single day. And
sure.
I remember the first time that somebody said to me they were homeschooled, and I was kind of really, because I can't imagine my kids actually paying attention to me. They'd be far more willing to go off and play Xbox and that. And I said, no.
Oh,
it's hard enough even getting them to do homework. Homework can take a whole weekend of trying to sellotape them to the chair so that they don't go off and do other things. And you're putting yourself into that every single day. You must be a madman, Ted.
Well, my wife, I won't take any more credit than what I should, because my wife does a lot of it. And I'm not going to paint a rosy picture of it. Trust me, my boys and girls really, they ask for Xbox every day too. And so it's just a kid thing. But it's so much fun. I mean, I would honestly just miss my children too much if they were gone 8 hours a day at school. And so much of their life, I only have them for 18 years, basically, or roughly. And then they're gone.
You're wishing, aren't you? I've got daughters. They're never going to move out. I've changed the locks 4 times and they still manage to get in. There's like a very large cat flap. I think that they're squeezing their way through. They're not going to move out when they're 18, Ted.
All right, so that's just wishful thinking.
It's once again, it's madness. You're not in the real world up in Indiana. They're going to be there till they're 35. You're going to be an old man traveling around the country, banging on your instrument just to provide for them and their kids, and they haven't moved out. That's a rosy image, isn't it? No, that's a very just. That's what we want. We want kids to stay at home for as long as we can and protect them and nurture them. There we go. I'm going to change my tact on that one. So, what do your kids think about your instrument?
They really enjoy it. It's one of those things where now that it's my job, they probably don't get to hear it as much. Really, it's kind of interesting unless they, every now and then. I think usually twice a year we pack up the whole family and they go with me on a little mini tour, and we kind of wrap in a vacation in there, so they get to watch me perform and encourage me in that, and yeah, we get to we get to spend hours on the road together, which is always fun. I have 2 boys that are really just very natural and gifted at it, but it's like I said before, it's kind of dragging them away from the electronics of the age to get them to play sometimes. So.
My son is learning guitar, and he's naturally talented at the guitar. And I play piano, and I'm not brilliant, but I can sit down and bang out a Billy Joel and an Elton John song, And I always say I sound very good until a proper player sits next to me, and then
right.
That's where the difference is. And he's really talented, and he'll sit there and he'll play, and I go, oh, if only you practiced. And he just hasn't got that thing in him at the moment to actually take himself to that next level. And it is, isn't it? You can take that talent, you can take that skill, but without application, it ain't going anywhere.
Well, and even, you said something, you alluded to it, it was, unless there's that passion or that inspiration, something's going to click one day if it's really deep inside them, and they're just going to attack it like they do the Xbox now, But I think if you have the opportunity for them to grow and to grab it when they want it, then that's definitely a step in the right direction.
I must admit, though, my daughter, who is 9, she got annoyed that my son wouldn't share his Xbox. So we found an old PlayStation 2, and we said, oh, that's good enough for you. You know, it hasn't got all the new games, but they're good enough. And she said to me, is that all right? You sound like you've just been shot.
No, sorry. I accidentally just strings on my dulcimer.
You can't stop it, can you? You want to hit it all the time. And so she said to me, oh, will you play Lego Batman with me? And I said, oh, go on then. I'll play Lego Batman with her. I can't stop myself now. I keep on saying to her, you know, if you've got 10, 15 minutes, I can make 10, 15 minutes. You know, don't worry about your homework. Come on, we've got to get in there. We've got to get through that next zone. And it's addictive. Yep. I can see why the kids get addicted to these things, because I'm exactly the same. And I'm 44 years old and I should know better.
Yep. No, I'm 42, and my kids got me. It took me the longest time to get me there, but they kept saying, "Dad, you got to play Minecraft with me," and I'm just like, "Oh, come on! It's like
rubbish.
Legos on a computer, you know."
I hate that game. My son's on that. That's the boring game, isn't it? If anyone hasn't got any idea what we're talking about, you go along at a snail's pace, chipping at little bits of rock and building stuff. It's a boring game.
My boys love Legos, and so it's a digital Lego world, you know, and yeah, it's quite interesting.
How many hours can you lose in Minecraft, Ted?
Oh, you know, when they first got me addicted to it, we would easily play an hour a day, but you know, so it hasn't gotten really bad, but it's I say no more times than I say yes, unfortunately.
So you don't creep out of bed at 2 o'clock in the morning and go down and start chipping away to build some tunnel that goes into nowhere?
I did in the beginning. I would stay up till 2 a.m. or something, just kind of mining and looking for gold and different things like that. So, but it's the novelty is worn off a bit for me. But I am 42, so you know.
We should know better.
If I had Legos, I wouldn't play with them. Yeah, exactly.
We should know better. We've got responsibilities. We've got beer to drink. We've got things to do.
That's right.
So when you get called to go and play, is it just because I've seen you on the web, and I want people to go over. We'll put the links to your site on there because it is amazing. I saw you doing Walking in Memphis, and you were playing Bing 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 Bing. That was my impression. But you sing at the same time, and it was a complete performance, and I was astonished really. The only time I've ever seen anyone sort of play an instrument like that, there was no singing involved. It was just instrumental. And has that set you apart? Do other people sing and play at the same time?
That is something that kind of sets me apart. I do create a lot of instrumental pieces. You know, that's part of the fun of it too, is taking like a Beatles piece and, you know, something that somebody's and somebody that sings along to a song, you know, they know the words and everything. And then you just make an instrumental piece that doesn't sound like elevator music basically. And that's a challenge and fun. But yeah, I think the singing and playing, you know, I always did it when I was playing piano, so it doesn't seem that different for me. I guess some people have a little harder time wrapping their mind around it, but having my hands do something else while I'm concentrating on words and melody, I don't know, doesn't come that hard for me.
Well, what is your song? Every musician has always got a song, but if they sit down, even if there's no one around, they will play first. My one is always Your Song by Elton John. If I sit at a piano, I will always play that one. And I know sort of guitarists that pick up their guitar and they do Stairway to Heaven or something. So have you got a kind of your favourite song that you will always just keep on coming back to?
Yes. I'd say it's got to be the Beatles' Norwegian Wood.
That's an unusual one. Yeah.
But I don't. That's just an instrumental one for me. I don't sing and play that one. But I I kind of liven it up. It's not at the tempo that they play it.
Can you give us a what do you say, a bang? How do you describe it?
I don't know. Just a sample.
Oh, a sample. That's a better way of saying it.
A sample. That's all right. All right. Yeah. I hope this isn't too loud. It's right in my lap where it normally isn't. So here we go.
Well, there's only one of me here, Ted, but I'm going to give you a round of applause for that one. That was amazing. Is that quite difficult to play on your lap? Do you need more room? Were you a bit sort of restricted there?
Just a little bit. But I every now and then when I play like with some other musicians and we do like something they call it in the round, and if I'm the only guy standing, I'll usually just put on one leg on the instrument and then rest it on my knees and kind of join all the guitarists that sit down and play.
It's got a kind of Indian-y sound, doesn't it? It reminded me of what's the Beatles one that they play? Off of the Revolver album. It come to me, but it was the first one that they put in sitar, and it's got that kind of that string resonance to it, hasn't it? Your instrument.
Yeah. Yep.
That's going to bug me for the rest of the show. Now I'm going to be thinking about that.
That wasn't Eleanor Rigby, was it?
No, it wasn't Eleanor Rigby.
No.
I will come back to it. So what I want to do at this point is actually play... I'm going to play a couple of the speeches that we play on the show. I've started bringing another chap in because I think this has really got more relevance to you than actually the Steve Jobs speech, which we'll play a little bit later. And this was a speech that wasn't that far away from you, I believe, done by Jim Carrey recently at a university. Have you heard of this speech that he did to a load of graduates?
I think I've heard of it. I've heard that it's out there. I don't think I've actually heard it.
Well, you're going to hear it now, and hold on to your dulcimer because this will blow you away. This is Jim Carrey at his inspirational best.
My father could have been a great comedian, but he didn't believe that was possible for him. And so he made a conservative choice. Instead, he got a safe job as an accountant. And when I was 12 years old, he was let go from that safe job. And our family had to do whatever we could to survive. I learned many great lessons from my father, not the least of which was that you can fail at what you don't want. So you might as well take a chance on doing what you love.
How about that? That is amazing, isn't it?
That's awesome. Love it.
Because it really says to you and your kids, and a lot of the sort of conversations we have now is that there isn't a safe choice anymore. For years and years and years, we would go through education, we'd get a job at the other end, and we'd work till retirement, and then that was it. But now, at any time, that can be taken away. Now, for somebody like yourself, who has got a skill, who's developed it, and has got an ability to bring in income on their own, does that send out a signal to your kids that actually we should be looking on a wider sense? We should be using the internet. We should be discussing what other people are doing in the world to earn an income, because ultimately that's the safest route.
I sure hope that that's one of the big things that they pull out of my time doing music. If this only lasts for a time, it's been the funnest years of my life so far. And one thing that's been even greater is the fact that I get to do it with my family. It's not something that I had established, beforehand and did it all by myself. If I didn't have my family, especially my wife, I wouldn't be doing this right now.
Why would you not be doing it? Because I would have thought if you didn't have them, you'd have freedom to go off and do it wherever you want. Why is that holding you back?
One thing is I was so stinking undisciplined when I was younger, and so you talked earlier about about Americans just being kind of, oh well, I don't know, blown about by the wind, just whimsy. We move by our emotions and that kind of stuff, and that's a gross interpretation of it. But that's what I was. I just, if I didn't want to do something, I didn't. If I was discouraged about something, I didn't fight through it. And so some of the lessons that I learned, being a husband, being a father, and then having someone like my wife who believes in me 100% is totally invaluable. And even along with that is someone who knows me so well that if I ever pretend to be something else on stage, I'm quickly reminded that, of who I am and what's the most important thing in this life, and that is my family.
So do you have to be uniquely yourself on stage then? You don't actually present a different Ted Yoder that sits at home in his underwear watching Minecraft for hours on end?
No, I really don't. I perform, I practice really hard, and I love putting on a show, if you will. But when it comes right down to the brass tacks of what I talk about, stories I share, I honestly try to be as personable and real as possible. One thing I just always hated in my life was disingenuous people. And, if I thrive on honesty, and so I can't do anything else, even when I'm in front of 700 or more people.
Well, what's the most that you've played in front of then? Because 700's, that's getting into Madison Square Garden. Not really, but it's big, isn't it? It's 700 people is a lot.
Yeah, no, those are great crowds to play in front of. I think I've performed in front of 1,000 to close to 1,500 a couple times, but I have yet to reach the numbers that I want to. I don't know that I don't have a grand desire to be Ed Sheeran and fill up Madison Square Garden, but I would love to go to just your basic little theaters and stuff and have a packed house. That 1,000 people are just fine with me.
There's no reason, Ted, why you can't do that. I was having a chat with a chap last night who basically has blagged his way to being on the spaceship going up into space with Richard Branson. And he was telling me how he did this. And it's going to be episode 85 or something, so it's going to be next week. But I'm just sort of summarising. He just decided, I want to go to space, how to do this. I know, let's try and find Richard Branson. So he found Richard Branson, and he found out that he was in Memphis. So he flew over to Memphis, blagged his way into the place where Branson was, managed to have a conversation with him and said, look, I'm a photographer, let me take photos from space with you. And Branson went, okay, let's see your work. Okay, right, I'll connect you with my my PA and we'll get things moving. And he said to Richard Branson, how many people have pitched this idea to you? And Branson said 2, you're the second. Now, that's unbelievable. He's got a chance to go up into space, and because of his boldness, he's given himself 50-50 odds. So there's no reason why you couldn't be the next Ed Sheeran, because Ed Sheeran did it himself, didn't he? Apparently, a year before he was, selling out places, he was going to halls in England where 5 people were, and actually paying for his bus fare there and bus fare back and stuff, and did it. When most people would have said it's not going to work, old Sheeran kept on going away, and he's a global star now.
Yeah.
And he hasn't got a cool name like you, Ted, either. Ted Yoder. That's a selling point.
I'll have to. It seems very common around here, so I don't know what it sounds like in other tongues, if you will.
Can you play Star Wars on your thing? Can you do that? That's got to be your theme tune, isn't it?
That's just real quick.
But you imagine how excited people will when they're in a hall, 1,500 people, and they say, and we've got Yoder coming on, that music
Yoder.
plays, and you walk on. Play, we must. It'd be brilliant. I want to see you go into wider audiences, and I'm going to do everything I can on this show. You're going to be heard in over 100 countries. So if anyone's out there who's listening and has got a hall or a stadium that's waiting for an unknown artist to come out and be the new Ed Sheeran, drop us a line, and drop Ted a line as well, because it needs to be held on a sort of wider scale. I think this. I'm now a Hammered Dulcimer champion.
Yes, sir.
You didn't know where to go with that, did you?
I didn't know where to go with that.
You just sat back thinking, what have I let myself in for? I'm going to be flying around the world, first class, going to all these places. You don't know if you really want that, Ted, do you?
If it pulls me too much away from my family, I don't want to be on the road touring for 2 months at a time. But if I can fly to Europe and spend a week over there and come back home, maybe bring my wife with me, that would be sweet.
Well, let's try to do that. Just before we sort of move you on to the next part of the show, I do want to bring up the Steve Jobs speech, because that is the key part to the show. And that really is the speech of 2005, when he talked about only being able to look back and join up your dots and see your path when you actually do give yourself a chance to reflect. I'm going to play it, and then I'm going to ask you a few questions based on these words, how it makes you feel, and whether you feel there's a relevance to your own progress in life. So this is Steve Jobs.
Of course, it was impossible to connect the dots looking forward when I was in college, but it was very, very clear looking backwards 10 years later. Again, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever. Because believing that the dots will connect down the road will give you the confidence to follow your heart, even when it leads you off the well-worn path. And that will make all the difference.
What do you think about those words, Ted?
Oh, they're definitely encouraging. I've always lived my life with not many regrets. I'm a very in the now type of person, so I'm probably your typical American. And so when it comes to facing fears because of doing something against the norm, or even just like this, you're stepping out, you're laying your heart on the line. Your music, your talent, this is who I am. This is a deep part of me, and you're laying it on the line in front of people. And if they don't like it, it's really hard not to take that personal. But so I just step out, and I let the chips fall where they may, and I don't really look back, because I just always figure that if I don't take the chance now, I don't want to live with regret. And there's always a 50-50 chance. No, I would actually say there's a greater chance of things working in your favor when you step out and just do what's in your heart to do. I think, I believe that, if you will, karma, life, whatever, fate, I believe it bends toward success. And those that don't succeed are the ones that truly either don't want to, and they're in the minority. If they would just take a few steps, if they would face their fear, and they would find that everything is behind them for success. And things will start to line up, things will fall into place, and they'll look back, in 10 years and say, wow, never thought I'd get to this place. So I don't think you have to be a fearless person. In fact, I don't think you can be a fearless person and succeed. Part of success is the fear of failure, and that's what keeps pushing us on.
I love that. I love what you're saying there, because it is so true. And it really is what I want to get across on these shows. You know, if there is somebody listening and they've just got this idea of what they want to do, just start doing it. That's you know, and don't put your house on it. Don't try to make it more difficult, because it really has struck me with a hammered dulcimer to the brain that the bigger the things that I'm trying to achieve are just coming to me easily. And I've got some guests that have lined up that I've recorded already, and I could not comprehend ever having a conversation with them, let alone now being able to contact them on Facebook and they're coming back to me and we're building up a relationship. And it was just the fact that I moved out of my comfort zone and started doing stuff. And it was nothing more than that. You know, I'm not clever. I can speak into a mic, and I think I'm better at speaking into a mic now than I was 100 shows again. But there's no difference between me and you and Elvis, or what? Well, Elvis, yeah, there was, wasn't there? But other than Elvis, the rest of us, we've all got the same fears. We've got all the same issues. We've got everything the same. But it's the way that we deal with those and we overcome those, and we keep on taking that one step and another step and another step. And ultimately you get to a point where you think, blimey, looking back, joining up those dots, I can see my path, but I don't know how I've got here, but God, I'm glad I am.
Yep. Yes.
It is amazing though, isn't it, Ted, why so many people are unwilling to learn that fact. You know, I've done over 110 episodes now, and every single person has said the same thing. And the people really high up the path are actually saying, even the people beyond them, like I had a conversation with a lady and she was talking about Harrison Ford, who she knows and stuff. And she was saying he's no different. It's just that he's had opportunities and he's made opportunities and he's had failures and he's kept on working. And then sometimes, fingers crossed, doors will open, and if you're willing enough to jump through them, you can make a new life for yourself. But if you are unwilling to jump through, then nothing's going to change.
Right. Yeah. You know, it is interesting. You know, we're using Ed Sheeran as an example. You know, people think he's an overnight success. Well, he's not. He's what you call a 10-year success. You know, it's just now everybody knows about him because he got a few gigs, but he worked hard behind the scenes for many years. One, because he was doing what he loved, but what do they say? When success is when preparation meets opportunity. Yeah. And so finally one day someone comes to him and says, "Hey, Ed, you know, we'd like you to do the soundtrack to, you know, The Hobbit." And you know, or the theme song. And I guarantee you that, you know, I don't know Ed personally, but I've heard him talk a few times, and he's no different than Harrison Ford or me. And when he had that opportunity, I bet you he was as scared to work on that thing as he was the first time he stepped on stage. And so just because we face the fear, people think because we get to one specific plateau, we get used to it. No, there's always new things that come up. You know, sure, I played in front of 700 to 1,000 people. Well, one day I am going to play for 2,000. One day I'm going to play for 10,000. You know, those opportunities are going to come because, you know, like I said earlier, I really believe life is stacked in our favor for success. And you really got to not want success to avoid it. But every time those doors come, that we still face the same fears, and it essentially is the fear of failure. But then we look at it and we say, "Oh my gosh, this opportunity! You know, you could say it's once in a lifetime. I'd be a fool to not take a step into that door."
I am scared every single episode, and I'm quite open with that. If you listen back to episode 1, episode 2, there's a different version of me, and I think it was just that the technicalities of doing the show, and I was looking at this thing and clicking on that and making sure it was all recording. I'm far more relaxed on that, but still, when I press record, I have butterflies in my stomach. And we have our little pre-chat beforehand just to get to know each other. And then we go 3, 2, 1, bang. And I feel the anticipation. And I was a financial trainer for years and years and years. And even though I would do training courses that last 3 days and I knew them inside out, 10 minutes beforehand, I used to get nervous on every single go. And it is those nerves, but those ability to deal with those nerves and that ability to know when you need to raise your game or you can rest a bit and just knowing yourself and how you can respond to situations. That's a key part, isn't it, to grabbing that success that we're talking about?
Yeah. Early on, this was even before I won the national championship, when I decided that, look, I don't want to turn 50 and still be wondering if I could have done this for a living. And so I just started going out. I went to 2 assisted living places, and were right close to my home. And I didn't have a website. I didn't have a business card. I didn't even have me recorded playing the Hammered Dulcimer. I played somebody else's version of a song on the Hammered Dulcimer for these people and said, well, this is what it sounds like. Can I come play for you guys? And they said, sure. But so, just as crazy as that sounds, anybody could do it then. But, I was reading a book at the time, and it was, I can't remember the author, but it was called Eat That Frog, I believe is the title. And the whole basis of the book is like, look, we all face stuff that we don't want to do. Either we fear it or we just don't like to do it. And there comes a time, so you might as well just eat your frog legs right away in the morning. That way it's done and you can, just get it out of the way. Just basically, it's a book about facing your fears. And so I focused on that a lot because one of my biggest fears was just, getting up in front of people and performing, just that fear of failure was so strong with me. And so once I just started doing it, sure, there were a couple times I fell on my face and, just had a really bad outing, but you muscle through it and learn from it and hopefully you don't do it again.
But what was it in you? Yeah, I know that feeling of I don't want to get to 50 and haven't done this thing. But what was it different about Ted that so many people managed to ignore? And there are so many people. I worked with people for years and years and years that had been in jobs that I hated, and I'd done 40 years in that job, and it was all they ever knew. So what was it about you that when, yes, I could get egg on my face, this could be scary, but I know that I've got to do it?
I know that I have to do it. I think, it was just always something that was there. I always, like I said, I grew up playing piano. I always wanted to be a musician. But like when I said earlier in the show that I'm a man of few regrets. That's a very true statement. It's not just a sentiment. There are literally only 1 or 2 things in my past that I can look at and say, man, I wished I would have. And so those wished I would have ideas that I have back then in my head have been hounding me for years. And when I first got married, then I took a normal job. I installed, flooring, and I had a career. I had a good business that made good money. We were living out close to Chicago at the time. And, it just, I'll tell you what, that you have that underlying desire that's always there. Okay. So I was always trying to do music. I was always touching an instrument, something, keeping that dream or just that passion alive. When we were in the height of my success as far as a contractor goes, we were making good money. We had a house, we weren't needing money, let's put it that way. We had a car accident, and I had the whole family with me, and the van flipped over, and I was the only one. My first thought was, okay, who's not going to be here when this is over? Because you just don't flip a minivan full of kids and people walk away, or everybody will walk away. Well, I was the only one that got hurt. The roof caved in on my head, gave me some pretty bad neck damage. And during my recovery time, I was just, I couldn't help but think, what if that was it? What would they have to say about me? That I was responsible, that I was, or, I don't know, what a boring epitaph, And I'm not necessarily looking to go out with a bang. Necessarily. I don't want to die in a helicopter on a mountainside, but I do want to instill in my family, my kids, and in other people, just this passion for life. If it truly is just a short time that we're here, goodness sakes, do something that matters. Do something that touches other people. Do something that comes deep down inside, that if you woke up 20 years from now and you still hadn't done it, I hope it's eating at you. And I don't know if that answers your question.
I think that answered the question so perfectly that if anyone is listening out there, just rewind that and then listen to it again, because that is the killer part of the show. It really is. How one thing in your life can actually be the dot that joins up all your dots and makes you look for the new path. And I think that was your dot. And as so many people say, Ted, normally the big dot, as we called it, is quite often the worst thing that could possibly happen at that time. But it's only when you look back on it and you go, thank God I did actually go through that, because without that, sure, I think I still would have been on that path of unfulfillment that I was traveling.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it in that perspective, but yeah, that was the turning point. Yep.
Well, let's turn you to a more positive state of mind, because what I'm going to do, I'm going to send you back in time now, and so that you can have a one-on-one with your younger self. And if you did go back in time and you met the younger Ted, what age would you speak to, and what words of advice would you give him for his years coming on? So I'm going to play the tune, and when it fades out, you're up. And this is Ted Yoder on the Sermon on the Mic. Ooh,
here we go with the best bit of the show, the Sermon on the Mic, the Sermon on the Mic.
I would say do what you fear and fear disappears. Or the worst thing you can do is be paralyzed by fear. Because 9 out of 10 times, fear is grossly over-exaggerated. And it'll just paralyze you and keep you exactly where you're at right now.
Right, short and sweet, that was Ted. So how can our guests connect with you?
Well, the easiest way is by email, ted@tedyoder.com. That is TEDYODER is how you spell my name. So ted@tedyoder.com is my email address. I'm on Facebook, Ted Yoder Music. You can find me on Twitter. I don't do a ton with Twitter, but Facebook and email are the easiest ways to connect. Of course, I have YouTube. My YouTube channel is up there. I got tons of videos up there, tons of music. Mostly, in fact, I should tell you, most of the videos that you see of me right now are this little version called Fan Friday that I started about 3 years ago. And it's usually just me getting outside or sitting in my living room or doing something with my kids, and I'm playing a song that somebody requested, or just a song that I just created or I'm working on. And I just share my music for free with people. So that's a lot of what's on YouTube. So go on over to YouTube, subscribe, and enjoy the music.
Ted, you've been an absolute delight to have you on the show. I didn't know anything about the Hammered Dulcimer, but I'm looking forward to the Yoder shearing mega mix that's going to be sort of coming out. That's got to be a listen to. So thank you so much for spending time with us today, joining up those dots, and thank you for being so honest and generous with your memories. Please come back again when you have more dots to join up, because I believe that by joining up those dots and connecting our pasts, it really is the best way to build our futures. Ted Yoder, thank you so much.
Thank you, David.
David doesn't want you to become a faded version of the brilliant self you were once to become. So he's put together an amazing guide for you called the 8 Pieces of Advice that every successful entrepreneur practices, including the 2 that changed his life. Head over to joinupdots.com to download this amazing guide for free, and we'll see you tomorrow on Join Up Dots.